Rayzr. Hey, welcome back to Sketchin with Rayzr, and today I am drawing some fan art of the Night Witch. It's somewhat of a pseudo Metroidvania slash bullet hell game, and it's essentially about these group of witches that rise up to take on these golems, but the story then transitions to years in the future where the witches sort of won the battle, but also sort of didn't, because the enemies are still around. But the main focus of the story then transitions to a witch named Rain, who not only has to take down the corrupted witches, but to also stop the golem army as well as uncover the truth behind why there's a lack of resources and why the golem army even started up in the first place. Spoiler alert for those even remotely interested. Skip to this point in the video. It ultimately ends up being this abnormal force underground that effectively caused everything to spiral out of control. It's a fun game where most of the challenge lies in maneuvering around the projectiles that's constantly coming at you from the enemies, as well as juggling what magic spells and techniques to use at the right time, because the combat system is linked to a card drawing mechanic, and by that I mean the cards that you draw have specific spells attached to them, and when you use said card, there is a cooldown before you can use the card again. Not only that, but before each battle you have to preset what cards you want to be drawing during the battle. But once you go into the battle, that's pretty much it. You have to deal with the enemies using whatever card you had set, which definitely messed me up a good number of times, because if you go in there without a good set of cards, you're gonna get dunked harder than an Oreo in a glass of milk. And nobody wants soggy Oreos, unless you're some sort of mad scientist. So it's somewhat of a trial and error aspect added to it as well. But for me, I think the most difficult thing about the game was me maneuvering around the constant barrage of projectiles and dealing with the somewhat difficult movement of the character, because the character isn't walking around. She's like floating. She's flying slash floating throughout the whole game. But because there's so many projectiles as well as a large increase in enemies, especially later on in the game, you can essentially just get bombarded no matter how you go about maneuvering around. Luckily, again, depending on what cards you bring to the battle, this can actually make things easier, if not harder. Because, you know, you got different defense spells, as well as spells that help maneuver you around the area. And I think the game really picks up when you're able to just teleport around, because the dash in this game is less of a dash and more like a short-range teleport. But during the teleport, you can essentially take no damage from any projectiles in your way. But at the same time, there's a cooldown right after the teleport, so you have to be mindful of when and where you're teleporting. As for the idea of this particular fan art, I'm still working on my perspective, as well as what I've said in the previous video. I wanted to work on lighting and shading. I wanted to have this particular battle that I'm drawing somewhat in the dark, so that I can then have her glowing blade light up most of the area, as well as the other glowing aspects of, you know, her gauntlet, her chest armor, and the glowing light from the enemy that she's fighting. And this enemy is one of the earliest bosses in the game, so it's not too much of a spoiler. But yeah, this was a game that I was going to have on my channel, but I have been focusing more on not only drawing fan art, as well as, you know, trying to improve my art in general, but I am also working on my comic, which I am pretty much done with the alpha phase of my comic. So once I add all the extra bells and whistles, I'm just going to go ahead and publish it, primarily digitally. But aside from that, let me know what you think of this particular art piece, as well as how I can improve on it. So I hope you guys have a good one, Make sure to keep your mind, body, and soul razor sharp.